Welcome to this reflection as we consider the passage from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 20, verses 1 through 16. I've entitled it, The Freedom in Generosity. I remember as a child asking my mother, which one of us, me or my 3 older sisters, did she love the most? I guess actually I don't remember asking her as much as I recall her response. She said, I don't love one of you more than the other. There is enough room in my heart to love each of you equally. I have always felt that she was sincere in her words. Even though my sisters and I have very different personalities and talents and abilities, never once did any of us feel that Mom loved the other more than anyone else. It was always equal. It always felt equal. And I never really quite understood that until I became a mother myself. And though I have 2 daughters, and they are very different and share some similarities, I have always found the capacity in my heart to love each of them for who they are and what they do equally. Yes, there is enough room in the heart to love all equally. As a child, my mother's words were deeply reassuring, comforting, affirming, and empowering. And today, that deep-rooted awareness of the capacity within the heart to love so deeply brings extraordinary freedom and peace on so many levels. Living with a sense of equality is not something that is the norm in our culture. Instead, we are always measuring ourselves, measuring the differences between one another. Who has the most toys, the bigger house, the larger bank account, the most degrees, the seniority in a job. The list could go on and on. And boy, does it bother us when we feel that someone hasn't earned the right, hasn't worked hard enough or long enough according to our rule of measurement. Unfair, we cry, not right. This attitude is exactly what this passage is having us look at today and challenging us to reflect on. What does fair and equal and just mean? What do these things mean in relation to our faith? In our reading, those who started work at the beginning of the day were absolutely indignant when they discovered at the end of the day that everyone, whether they came, halfway through the day or just maybe an hour before it was time to go home, that every single one of the workers received the same wage. Outrageous. And certainly the disciples, as Jesus told this story, must have resonated with that cry. Outrageous, how can this be? And perhaps our reaction is very much the same way when we first look at these words, this story. We possess a tendency to judge rather than accept, to cry foul when we don't think that we have been treated fairly. Why should we all be given the same when the level of effort is not equal? We struggle with the idea that others are getting more than we think they deserve, than we think they've earned. We are quick to pass judgment on those who need extra help along the way through this journey of life. They're just using the system, taking advantage, we hear others say. Yet, Jesus' telling of this story is not about the measurement of work by the individuals hired or who earned, who deserved what or how much. But this story is about the generosity of the owner, the one who did the hiring in the first place. It's not about equality in the sense of who deserves what over another. This story is about the owner's recognition of the value of each individual, not in monetary terms, but rather in terms of life. In recognition of all, regardless of when they arrived or how much they did. It rubs us the wrong way because it asks us to step out of our patterns of judgment and measurement and stand on equal footing before the generosity of God, before the generosity of creation, of the earth. None of us is more significant than the other. Those are terms we are not used to or comfortable with. Measurement, sizing up our place among family, of friends, co-workers, fellow students, colleagues. That's all a part of how we have learned to identify ourselves in comparison to others. So this passage, though, takes a different angle. Rather than see ourselves in comparison to others, we are being asked to see ourselves alongside one another, a part of the whole, equal players in relationship with our Creator. Jesus shares this story to illustrate that there are no chosen ones in God's kingdom, in God's reign of love. All are equally invited. All are equally received. All are equally embraced. When challenged by what seems unfair, the owner of the fields in this story tells each one of them, reminds them that they all agreed. They all agreed to the wages that they were offered. And at that moment of being hired, they all agreed that it was worth it and that it was fair and it was just. It was only once the wages were given out at the end of the day and they started to compare and look at one another and size up who had been there longest and who had been there for such a short time that they begin to complain. And yet, there is tremendous freedom when we think about the fact that this was all a gift. We might feel compelled to join in that frustration of these who were hired, but instead we are being asked to look through different lenses that recognize reasons for gratitude, and that we are equally loved. That is called grace. And there is tremendous freedom in that recognition. Freedom in knowing that we can't do anything to earn the love of God, to deserve special treatment in this created order of things, but that we are equal participants in the unfolding realm of love that has been, is, and will be. Moreover, there is freedom in letting go. Letting go of the trap that we set for ourselves and others whenever we choose to compare, pass judgment, or seek to measure ourselves, our self-worth, or someone else's self-worth. Instead, we are being compelled. We are being compelled to not only receive with gratitude, but to celebrate our partnership with one another and being a part of the movement of love that can and that will change the world. Ever since I've been in ministry, and that's been 26 years now, I have heard stories about, and I've listened to worries about prospects of the church with so little or no children or young families. They are the church's future, I've heard people say. Without them, the church will die. And yet, I have watched churches grow, even though there have been a small number of children, or maybe that number hasn't even increased much with children and families. And I have seen congregations wring their hands in great concern over sustaining themselves even for a few more years, and yet instead have discovered growth through the demonstration of deep compassion and love. I have led and served leadership gatherings to focus on new ways of reaching out to the community, to draw more in. But in all of these cases, it has been more the posture of the people than the variety of the programs that has ultimately strengthened the church and embraced more participants. In a way, it comes back to community. And community is about realizing the value of each member, of every person, giving thanks for every individual life, and celebrating the common bond of grace that draws us together as one. Indeed, there is great freedom in knowing more fully the generosity of this gift of life that we each possess. While our society tries to place earned value and measured worth on our lives, our faith never has and never will. We all stand as equals before the Spirit of divine love, and likewise, our faith commands that we are to do the same toward one another. In that way, truth indeed will set us free. No one is better than, greater than, more valuable than another. Christian love is not about earned right, but rather divine devotion, God's grace. May we find ourselves melting into that embrace of generosity that invites us and fills us with immeasurable love. Blessings and peace to you this day. Amen.